Matt Walsh appeared on Jillian Michaels' show, Keeping It Real. And it's interesting seeing people who aren't really political commentators, from what I understand about Jillian, but can kind of just, in layman's terms, debunk some of these right-wing political commentators' logic on issues. Here, they're debating gay marriage. And Matt Walsh, what's so strange is he's been on so many shows. I'll show you a clip from a little while ago on Rogan's show.
Luke Beasley in the building on After Show Carnage. Luke Beasley reacting to Matt Walsh on with Jillian Michaels. Jillian Michaels has a great show. She has a really good show. I've been watching it. Matt Walsh is really great. He had a cringe take on Greenland here recently, but he's good. Luke Beasley. And you know who does a show with Luke Beasley? Who I didn't know until that viral moment between Luke Beasley and Tim Pool. The homegirl, Isabella Moody, who has been on the show as far as like me reacting, and I'm a big fan and supporter of. So actually, and then I started listening to Luke Beasley on his own. I like him, even though I don't fully agree with him. You know, I call balls and strikes here. He's talented. Let's get into his reaction. Luke Beasley reacted to Matt Walsh on Jillian Michael on the Rainbow People getting married.
So the biggest podcast in the world, he's talked about this. He's been on so many platforms talking about gay marriage. And so you would think he'd be prepared then to clearly, concisely, and effectively articulate his position. But every time I hear him talking about his opposition to gay marriage, it's very slow moving and disjointed, and it blows up after a little bit of pressing from the interviewer, including just Joe Rogan, who we know is not the bastion of liberalism, especially not these days. But first, hear from this podcast, Jillian Michaels kind of gets into it with him, and we'll watch that play out, then I'll give him a response. While you watch this, please do click the subscribe button if you appreciate this channel.
We don't do that for Luke Beasley. I'm reacting to Luke Beasley. Sub to him if you like him, but also to After Show Carnage. Give your boy a like. I really like comments. The comments are so great, but do what you can to help out After Show Carnage. Let's get into it. Matt Walsh on Rainbow People and getting married on with Jillian Michaels with a Luke Beasley twist.
So, you know, but it's always been that fundamental purpose. There has never been a society until ours right now that has said, well, actually, marriage has nothing to do with procreation at all. That society has never existed, unless you can think of an example.
No, there's rights that pertain to the kids, but my ex procreated, but also I adopted a kid. We adopted a kid. And what happens to all these protections then if you hypothetically got your way?
Well, I mean, you'd have tough individual situations like that. I don't deny it. And when you allow,
like, what are we doing here? Why is he just melting into himself? Quick, go explain it. I'm bored. Well, I guess when you put it that way, he's
not lying.
Yeah, that'd suck. You haven't already considered such that you would have a response prepared?
Yeah.
If marriage is just for procreation, what about, even if we separate the gay marriage argument, what about couples who adopt? What about couples who don't have any children? Even if they're straight couples, should they not be allowed to get married? And he's like, oh God, interesting question. You haven't thought of this before?
For the institution of marriage to be essentially disbanded, as it has been in this country.
I don't see that, Matt.
Any effort to...
I don't see that allowing people to be a part of something that is special. I don't see how that disbands it.
How would you define marriage?
Well, I mean, I would go with these literal definitions. So the state of being united as spouses in a consensual and contractual relationship recognized by law. That is literally how I define it. And also called matrimony or wedlock, culturally and often legally recognized union between two people called spouses. And yes, I know historically the spouses were man and woman, but It establishes rights and obligations between them, as well as between them and their children.
Do you recognize at least that removing the family, removing the creation of children from the definition entirely means that you have a definition there that is? Would you at least recognize that it is that it is unprecedented in the history of human civilization?
I don't believe that's true, man. I mean, it's irrelevant to me to the take now, but I don't think that that's true. There's all kinds of men on men and all. I have to look up the marriage part of it, but let me look that up real quick and back back to you. I mean, all this stuff is not new. Let me get back to this. This is Matt Walsh. Jillian Michaels doing great. Matt Walsh, respect for having the conversation. No diss to Matt Walsh. I like Matt Walsh a lot, and Luke Beasley's going to pile on. He's going to find, he's going to find the weaknesses in the right and exploit it. I do the same with the left. Let's get back to Luke Beasley.
I guess so. I mean, I would have to go, I don't know. I know that there's been homosexuality throughout history.
Mm-hmm.
I would presume to, I guess so. I've done zero homework on this, so if somebody knows better than me, please leave it in the comments. But
well, I just did a quick AI search with Perplexity. Let's see, you tell me if this is right. I haven't done any deep research on it, but the response I asked Perplexity, has any society before America recognized the rainbow people getting married? It says yes. Well, it's biased, so it's probably going to find a yes to that. All these AIs are really dystopian, but it says ancient Mesopotamia, the Almanac of Incantations contained prayers for both same people couples. I don't know if that's the same thing. Ancient Rome, we know there was a lot of hanky-panky going on there. Rome and Greece. Ancient Rome and Greece, some Roman emperors married. They were men. They married other men. For example, Nero, wait for it, married someone who wasn't a man in a traditional ceremony. Somebody else here, married two men. Greece, while not officially recognized as marriages, so that doesn't count then. Some groups allowed women to marry other women in pre-colonial Africa, particularly widows who didn't want to remarry men. So indigenous cultures, many Native American tribes recognize two-spirited, I think that's where the two-spirit comes from the whole alphabet people, two-spirited individuals, and some permitted same gender. Ancient China, during the Zhao dynasty, I'm not familiar with that. There are records of same male partnerships. So it looks like it's a little shaky there. So I'm not 100%, but we've seen something there. But here's the take. How's that relevant? Either you're for it or you're not.
at the same time, women were getting raped, slavery was legal. There's a lot of things we had to evolve out of. So, if we dive
but I don't think marriage was one of those things.
But marriage has...
Well, that's what gets to an important understanding of this. Folks like Matt Walsh will try to say that his argument, he can detach it completely. He said at the beginning of this interview, I'm pretty sure, you could detach completely from his religious belief and still make an argument against gay marriage, just about the institution of marriage. And a lot of times there's this assertion that you can have objective morals on such a thing, when of course we're talking about our subjective approach to a principle that I'm willing to disagree with people on. I'm just annoyed when they seem to back up their pro-restriction of other people's rights argument with really flimsy logic. That's what's upsetting. You can have different morals that say it is way better for society and thus that's what the state should do. The arguments never seem to pan out that well, because he's saying, no, well, the reason I'm against gay marriage is based on them not being able to procreate. But I want to apply the same logic to couples that are infertile. Or did you know that George Washington himself, Matt, didn't have any biological children with his wife? Are you wanting to take away our first president's marriage? How unpatriotic. here's him struggling with.
I don't know. You tell me. Tell me where Luke's wrong there. I'll tell you the true problem with marriage, and the reason why Matt can't have this conversation. It's really Matt Walsh's biggest weakness. I have a lot of different philosophies in me, and one of them is a libertarian. I don't call myself a libertarian, but I can recognize the libertarian approach here. The problem with marriage isn't the same type of rainbow people getting married. The problem is, why do we have to recognize it with the government in the first place? That's the problem. Marriage is a religious, a church type of, people don't even get married in churches anymore, really. It is something of the church. And some of the churches out there, Matt, they fly the rainbow flag. So the problem is the federal government needing to get involved with recognizing a contract between two people. That's all a marriage is. I know it sounds bad, but that's what it is. It's a contract between two people. So it doesn't matter if the two people have children. It doesn't, because you can incentivize and say, like we do, you have tax breaks for having one child, two child, whatever. So it doesn't matter if you're saying, from the government standpoint, not a religious one, from the government standpoint, it doesn't matter. So Matt, if you want it to matter, then you don't want the federal government. You can't have it both ways. The federal government's not going to look at it and say, well, we're not going to do a contract between two people just because it's, who knows what they are. They transformed and all this. We're not going to pile through that. You could have the federal government and leave it up to the states, and a red state would say it has to be a biological man and woman, and California would say you could get married to a frog. And then then that would cause all these complications with the federal government. It just isn't I understand where Matt's coming from. I'm not against you, Matt, but even the churches don't agree on it. So why do you think the federal government could? Let me know what you think.
The next clip is ready below. Welcome to After Show Carnage.